Welcome back to the channel where we dive into the juiciest and most controversial "Am I the asshole?" stories from Reddit. In today's edition, we're focusing on some of the most heated and emotional topics: evil step-parents and messy divorces. Get ready to hear about step-parents overstepping boundaries, manipulative behavior, and the difficult choices people face when families fall apart. These stories will have you questioning who the real villains are and whether some actions can ever be forgiven. Let's jump right in.
When I married Maggie 3 years ago, I thought I had found the perfect partner. We both came into the marriage with daughters from previous relationships. Maggie had Amber, who was 12 at the time, and I had Jill, who was 11. From the very beginning, the girls got along great. They quickly became friends, and I was thrilled to see our two families blending so seamlessly. But over time, I started to notice small things that made me question whether Maggie truly saw Jill as equal to Amber. At first, it was just little things. One day I came home from work and saw Amber wearing Jill's favorite sweater, a cozy, oversized knit that Jill had received from her grandmother. When I asked Maggie about it, she brushed it off, saying that the sweater was too big for Jill, and that Amber needed something warm to wear. "I'll get Jill a new one next week," she promised. I didn't think much of it at the time, but next week came and went, and Jill never got a new sweater. Then there were the earrings. Jill had a beautiful pair of silver earrings that she cherished. They were her first pair of grown-up earrings, and she wore them whenever she could. One afternoon I noticed Amber wearing them. When I asked Maggie about it, she said, "Oh, Jill's ears broke out when she wore them, so I let Amber borrow them. I'll pick Jill up some new ones next week." Again, the new earrings never materialized, and Amber continued to wear Jill's. But the final straw came when Jill's favorite necklace went missing. It was a simple gold chain with a small heart pendant. Nothing fancy, but it had been a gift from her mother, and Jill was heartbroken when she couldn't find it. We searched the house from top to bottom, but it was nowhere to be found. A few days later, I saw Amber wearing it. I confronted Maggie, and she admitted that she had given the necklace to Amber because she liked it so much, and that Jill could share. That was when Jill came to me in tears, saying that she wanted to go live with her mother full-time. She said she felt like she didn't matter in our home, that everything she had was taken away and given to Amber. That's when the truth came out. Maggie had been systematically giving Jill's belongings to Amber, making excuses and promises that she never kept. Jill felt like she was always second to Amber, and it broke my heart to see her so hurt. I couldn't believe it. I had trusted Maggie to treat Jill with the same love and care that she showed Amber, but it was clear that she hadn't. I tried talking to Maggie about it, but she didn't see the problem. She insisted that it was just sharing and that Jill needed to learn to be more generous. But it wasn't about sharing, it was about fairness and respect. Jill's belongings were hers, and she had the right to keep them. I realized that Maggie would always put Amber first, no matter how it affected Jill. I couldn't stand by and watch my daughter be treated like she was less important. So I made the difficult decision to end our marriage. I filed for divorce and moved out with Jill. She's now living with her mother full-time, and I see her every weekend. She's happier now, and I know I made the right decision for her well-being. But sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Was I wrong to end my marriage over this? Was I being too protective of Jill, or was I right to stand up for her? I know marriage is about compromise, but I couldn't compromise on this. I couldn't let Jill feel like she was second best in her own home. So, am I the asshole for divorcing my wife because she put her kids first? Or was I justified in standing up for my daughter and making sure she knew she was just as important as anyone else?
Am I the asshole for refusing to take my ex's kids on vacation to Disney? I'm Jane, a 37-year-old mom of two amazing kids, Ben, who is 10, and Emma, who is 8. My ex-husband Marty and I have been divorced for 5 years now. We've both moved on. He's remarried with 2 younger kids, Lily, who is 5, and Max, who is 3, with his new wife, Sarah. While our co-parenting relationship has its ups and downs, we've generally managed to keep things civil for the sake of our kids. But something happened recently that has me questioning whether I'm in the wrong. For the past year, I've been planning a trip to Disney World for Ben and Emma. It's something I've saved up for, and I'm really excited to give them this experience. We've all been looking forward to it, and I've spent countless hours researching the best rides, restaurants, and events to make it truly special for them. A couple of weeks ago, when I picked the kids up from Marty's house, Ben excitedly mentioned to him that we were going to Disney. Marty's reaction was pretty neutral at first, but later that evening, I got a text from him asking if we could talk. When we spoke, Marty explained that when his younger kids overheard Ben and Emma talking about the Disney trip, they were upset that they weren't going too. He asked if I would consider taking Lily and Max along with us on the trip so they wouldn't feel left out. He said they were so disappointed and that it would mean the world to them if they could join. I was caught off guard. I hadn't planned or budgeted for anyone other than Ben and Emma, and I told Marty as much. Plus, this was supposed to be a special trip for just the three of us, my chance to bond with my kids and create some amazing memories together. I explained to him that I didn't think it was fair to expect me to take on the responsibility of his younger kids, especially since I'd never even traveled with them before. Marty was clearly unhappy with my response. He accused me of being selfish and unfair to Lily and Max. He argued that they're practically siblings to Ben and Emma and that taking them along would help foster a closer bond between all the kids. I told him I understood his point, but that this trip was something I'd been planning for a long time, and I wasn't willing to change my plans. The next weekend, when I went to pick up Ben and Emma, Marty's younger kids came running out of the house, screaming with joy about how they were going to Disney. It was obvious Marty had told them they might be going, and I felt my heart sink because I knew what was coming next. When I gently explained to Lily and Max that they wouldn't be coming with us, they both burst into tears. It was heartbreaking to see their little faces crumple in disappointment. Sarah came out and tried to comfort them, but they were inconsolable. Marty shot me a look that made it clear he blamed me for the whole situation. Ben and Emma seemed torn, happy about the trip, but guilty that their half-siblings were so upset. On the drive home, Ben asked why Lily and Max couldn't come with us. I did my best to explain that the trip was something I'd planned for just us, and that it wouldn't be fair to ask them to change everything last minute. But I could tell they were still feeling conflicted. Since then, things have been tense. Marty and Sarah have been giving me the cold shoulder, and even Ben and Emma seem a bit distant, though they're still excited about the trip. I can't shake the feeling that I might be the bad guy here, even though I know I'm within my rights to keep the trip as it was originally planned. Am I the asshole for refusing to take my ex's kids to Disney with us? Should I have just sucked it up and included them to avoid all this drama? Or was I right to stand my ground and keep this a special experience for just me, Ben, and Emma? When James and I divorced, it was tough, but we managed to keep things civil for the sake of our sons, Richard and Ryan. Co-parenting hasn't always been easy, but we made it work. Things changed when he married Barbara, who already had 3 kids from a previous marriage. They also had 2 more children together, making for a very full house. I knew life would be different for Richard and Ryan with such a big blended family. I was prepared for the adjustments that would come with it. What I wasn't prepared for was James expecting me to help cover the costs for kids that aren't mine. The first sign of trouble came when James started asking for all of Richard and Ryan's hand-me-down clothes. It just makes sense, he said. They grow out of things so quickly, and Barbara's kids can use them. I didn't mind sending over the clothes my boys had outgrown. But then it started getting out of hand. James would ask for specific items, things that were barely worn, or clothes I had planned to keep as mementos. When I hesitated, he acted like I was being selfish. Things escalated when school started this year. Since James was dropping the boys off for their first day, I sent them with the school supplies they needed. I thought I was doing the right thing by ensuring they had everything. But later that day, James called me. "Mary, you didn't send enough supplies," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "I bought everything on their lists." "Yeah, but Barbara's kids didn't get everything they needed. You should have picked up extra supplies for them too. They're all going to the same school. It's only fair." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "James, those aren't my kids. It's not my responsibility to buy their school supplies." He sighed like I was missing the point. "You know our budget is tight with so many kids. It wouldn't have hurt to help out." I bit my tongue, trying to stay calm. "James, if you and Barbara can't afford the basics, maybe Barbara should consider getting a job." That didn't go over well. He got defensive, saying Barbara was busy managing the household and that I was being unreasonable. The final straw came when he asked me to top off Barbara's kids' lunch accounts because all the kids eat together at school, and it's awkward if some of them can't afford lunch. I snapped. "James, your wife's kids are not my responsibility. I already make sure our sons have everything they need." You can't expect me to provide for children that aren't mine. It's not fair to ask. He accused me of being unsupportive and not understanding what it's like to have such a big family. But honestly, I don't think that's my problem. I want to be there for my boys, but I refuse to be guilt-tripped into paying for things that Barbara's kids need. Now I'm wondering, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for necessities for kids that aren't mine? Should I be more understanding of their situation, or was I right to draw the line?
Growing up, my grandparents were my world. They were the ones who spoiled me, who made me feel like I was the center of the universe. When I was little, they gave me 3 stuffed animals: a small rabbit, a bear, and a kitten. These stuffed animals were more than just toys to me. They were a connection to the love and warmth I felt from my grandparents, who have both passed away now. They sat on my bed throughout my childhood, came with me to college, and stayed with me even after I got married. My husband, Jim, never quite understood my attachment to these stuffed animals. He thought it was childish, a grown woman keeping stuffed toys on the bed. But he knew how much they meant to me, so he never said much about it. Whenever his nieces came over, they would always want to play with them. I didn't mind. Seeing the girls enjoy them brought back memories of my own childhood. But when they asked to take them home, I always said no. Those stuffed animals were special, and I couldn't bear to part with them. Then one day, the smallest of the 3, the rabbit, went missing. I was frantic, turning the house upside down searching for it. Jim helped me look, and we spent hours combing through every nook and cranny, but it was nowhere to be found. Jim wasn't fond of the stuffed animals, but he searched like his life depended on it. Eventually, I had to accept that it was gone, though it broke my heart. A few days later, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post from Jim's sister. There was a picture of her daughter, Cassie, holding my rabbit. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen, trying to convince myself that it had to be a different toy. But I knew it wasn't. It was mine. I confronted Jim, and he turned red, refusing to meet my eyes as he stammered, "It has to be a different one." But I knew. I went to my sister-in-law's house, and the moment she saw me, she got flustered. "You can't take it," she rushed to say. Jim gave it to Cassie. "She really loves it." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Jim had given it away, without asking me, without considering how much it meant to me. Despite the crying, the screaming, and the hiccuping sobs from Cassie, I took the stuffed animal back. It was mine, and I wasn't going to let it go. When I got home, I didn't even bother talking to Jim. I just packed my things and left. Now, I'm left wondering, was I wrong to end my marriage over a stuffed animal? It wasn't just a toy to me. It was a piece of my heart, a connection to the people I loved most in the world. Jim knew that, and he gave it away anyway. I feel betrayed, like he didn't care about my feelings or what was important to me. To me, it's an even bigger betrayal, since Jim pretended to help me look for it when he knew he'd given it away. But sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. It was just a stuffed animal after all. Should I have tried to work things out? Should I have been more understanding? Or was I right to stand up for what mattered to me, even if it meant ending my marriage? Am I the asshole for leaving over something that might seem trivial to others, but was so precious to me?
I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would call off a wedding, especially not a week before the big day. But here I am, sitting alone in a house that's supposed to be filled with wedding plans, all because of a conversation between Barbie and Skipper. My fiancée Sophie and I have been together for 2 years. We met through mutual friends, and she seemed like everything I could want in a partner: smart, kind, and great, with my 7-year-old daughter Madeline. Madeline's mother passed away when she was 3, and I've been raising her on my own ever since. When Sophie came into our lives, it felt like a blessing. She was warm and caring, and she seemed to really connect with Madeline. Over the past year, Sophie moved in with us, and we started planning our future together. I was thrilled to see Madeline and Sophie getting along so well. But as the wedding day approached, I started to notice some changes. Sophie seemed more irritable, especially when she was alone with Madeline. She would snap at small things, but I chalked it up to pre-wedding stress. I should have paid more attention. Then, last night, everything changed. I was in the kitchen, finishing up some work on my laptop, when I heard Madeline playing with her Barbies in the living room. She was deep in her imaginary world, voicing all the characters. Normally, I'd smile at her creativity, but something about the tone of her voice caught my attention. Barbie was talking to Skipper, and what she said made my heart drop.
You're such a burden, Skipper. I wish you would just go away. You're not good enough to be part of this family. No one really loves you. They just put up with you because they have to.
I froze, listening to the words coming out of my sweet little girl's mouth. Where on earth had she learned to talk like that? I walked into the living room and gently asked her about the conversation she was having. She looked up at me, a little embarrassed, and said,
That's just how Sophie talks to me when you're not around.
My stomach churned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sophie, the woman I was about to marry, was saying these things to my daughter? I had to know more, so I sat down with Madeline and gently asked her to tell me about what Sophie said when I wasn't around. As Madeline talked, I felt my anger and hurt growing. Sophie had been cruel and unfeeling toward her, saying things like she wasn't good enough, that she was a burden, and that no one really loved her. Madeline explained that Sophie would get angry when she didn't do things perfectly, like when she struggled with her homework or made a mess. She even told Madeline that I'd be happier if it was just the two of us, and that she was the reason I was always stressed. I was furious. I couldn't believe that the woman I loved, the woman I was about to marry, had been treating my daughter this way behind my back. How could I have been so blind? I felt a surge of guilt for not noticing sooner, for not protecting Madeline from someone who was supposed to care for her. I confronted Sophie as soon as she came home. She tried to deny it at first, but when she saw how serious I was, she admitted it.
I didn't mean to be so harsh. I'm under a lot of pressure and I really don't know how to handle being a stepmother.
But there was no excuse for the way she had treated Madeline. No child should ever feel like a burden in their own home. I didn't even have to think about it. I told Sophie to pack her things and leave. The wedding was off, and our relationship was over.
I'm so sorry. Please give me another chance.
She tried to apologize, to beg for another chance, but I couldn't listen. All I could think about was Madeline, and how I had let this woman into our lives, only to have her hurt my daughter when I wasn't looking. Sophie left that night, and the house has been eerily quiet ever since. I've been spending all my time with Madeline, reassuring her that she's loved, that she's enough, and that none of this is her fault. It breaks my heart to think of the things Sophie said to her, and I'm determined to make sure she never has to hear anything like that again. So am I the asshole for calling off the wedding and kicking Sophie out? Some people might say I acted too quickly, that I should have tried to work things out, but I know in my heart that I made the right choice. My daughter is my priority, and I won't let anyone treat her like she's anything less than amazing. I've learned a lot from this experience. I've learned to trust my instincts, to pay attention to the small things, and to never let anyone come between me and my child. Madeline deserves to grow up in a home where she's loved and cherished, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure that's exactly what she gets.
I've been divorced from my ex-husband Mark for about 5 years now. We have 2 kids together, and our custody arrangement is pretty standard. He has them every other weekend and for a few weeks during the summer. Things have been mostly amicable between us, especially since he remarried 2 years ago. His new wife Lisa seems nice enough, and the kids don't have any issues with her, which is all I can ask for. But lately, something has been bothering me. Lisa has started asking me for money whenever the kids are with them. The first time, she called me and said she wanted to take the kids to a local amusement park. She explained that it was Mark's weekend, but he had a last-minute work thing come up, so she would be taking them instead. She asked if I could pitch in for the tickets and food. I was caught off guard, but agreed to help out because it sounded like a special outing for the kids. The second time, it was a similar situation. Mark had to go out of town for work, so Lisa was going to watch the kids for the weekend. She called me again, this time asking if I could pay her for babysitting since she wasn't their real mom and felt like it was extra work she should be compensated for. I was uncomfortable with the request, but ended up sending her some money just to keep the peace. The third time, though, was the last straw. It was another one of Mark's weekends, and he was away on a business trip. Lisa told me she would be taking care of the kids again and wanted to take them to a movie. But this time, she didn't even ask. She just sent me a Venmo request for the cost of the tickets and snacks. That's when I decided enough was enough. I told Lisa that I wasn't going to pay her to watch my kids during Mark's visitation time. If Mark wasn't available, it was his responsibility to make arrangements, not mine. I felt like she was treating me like a bank account rather than the kid's mother, and it made me uncomfortable. I also didn't like the idea of paying her to be a stepmom. She chose to marry Mark knowing he had kids, and in my mind, that means she's also responsible for them during his time, whether she likes it or not. Now, Lisa is upset, and Mark is saying that I'm being unreasonable and that I should be grateful Lisa is willing to step in when he can't. But I can't shake the feeling that this is crossing a line. I don't want to be seen as difficult, but I also don't think it's fair for me to pay someone else to take care of my kids during their father's time. So, am I the asshole for refusing to pay my kid's stepmom to babysit? Should I be more understanding of her position, or am I right to draw the line here?
As a grandmother, nothing in this world is more precious to me than my 3 grandchildren, Mary, Sam, and William. I've always loved being a part of their lives, and my son-in-law Glenn has been like a son to me ever since he married my daughter Marie. In fact, I often say Glenn is one of my favourite people in the world. He's kind, patient, and a wonderful father. When Marie left the family to pursue her career in London, it broke my heart. But I was even more devastated for the children and Glenn. They needed her, and she just left. Marie and Glenn eventually divorced, and Glenn struggled as a single parent, juggling work and raising 3 kids. He tried dating here and there, but it was hard to find someone who could step into the complex role of being a stepmother while also understanding the unique challenges of Glenn's situation. After a few years, though, he met Tony. On the surface, she seemed like a perfect match, attentive, caring, and willing to help with the kids. She picked them up from school, took them to activities, and even made an effort to spend time with me. At first, I was relieved. Glenn had been through so much, and I wanted him to be happy. But then, one day, while we were having lunch together, Tony let something slip that made my blood run cold. She casually mentioned how she hoped the kids might choose to live with their mother in London at some point, so she and Glenn could have more alone time. I nearly dropped my teacup. From that moment on, something changed inside me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Tony wasn't as committed to the kids as she appeared. The more I thought about it, the more I started to notice things about her that seemed off. Maybe it was because I was looking for them, but I couldn't help but feel like my grandchildren deserved better. Here are a few of the things I noticed. Mary's birthday. On Mary's 10th birthday, I noticed that Tony had taken it upon herself to plan the party. It was a lovely gesture, but something felt wrong when Mary unwrapped her gifts. There were clothes and toys, sure, but also a book about learning to live with stepfamilies. Mary's face fell when she saw it. She didn't need to be reminded that her family was broken, especially not on her birthday. Sam's soccer practice. One day, I picked up Sam from soccer practice because Glenn had to work late. When we got home, Tony wasn't there. Sam mentioned that she often dropped him off at practice and then ran errands or went to the gym instead of staying to watch. I could see the disappointment in his eyes. He was just 8, and all he wanted was for someone to cheer him on from the sidelines. William, the youngest, still struggles with nightmares, and he often wakes up in the middle of the night. I remember Glenn telling me that Tony insisted on a strict no coddling rule. If William woke up, she wouldn't let Glenn go to him unless he was really upset. She believed he needed to toughen up and learn to soothe himself. I know children need to develop independence, but William is only 5. He still needs comfort, especially after everything he's been through. As time went on, I started to voice my concerns to Glenn. At first, he brushed them off, saying that Tony was just adjusting to her role as a stepmother and that she was doing her best. But the more I pointed out, the more he started to see things my way. I wasn't trying to ruin his chance at happiness. I just couldn't stand the thought of my grandchildren not being loved and cared for the way they deserved. Eventually, things between Glenn and Tony became strained. He started to question whether she was really the right person to help raise his children, and not long after, they broke up. Glenn was devastated, but but I could see the relief in his eyes. He told me that he'd been having doubts about Tony for a while, but hadn't wanted to admit it to himself. He didn't want to be alone again, and he didn't want the kids to go through another loss. Now, looking back, I wonder if I did the right thing. Was I wrong for picking apart Tony's actions, for pointing out every little thing she did that didn't sit right with me? Did I ruin Glenn's chance at happiness just to protect my grandchildren? Or was I right to trust my instincts, to ensure that the kids were truly loved and cared for? At the end of the day, I can't help but feel that I did what any grandmother would do. My grandchildren's well-being comes first, even if it means Glenn has to wait a little longer to find the right person. I just hope that when he does, she'll love those kids as much as I do.
I was supposed to be married next week. The tux was ready, the venue was booked, and the invitations had gone out. My fiancée, Becca, was everything I had hoped for. Smart, beautiful, and supportive. At least, that's what I thought until I stumbled upon the truth. Becca and I had been together for 3 years, and I'd fallen hard. She seemed perfect, kind-hearted, funny, and accepting of the fact that I had a 7-year-old daughter, Mia, from my previous marriage. Mia lived with me part-time, spending weekends and holidays with her mother Carmen. My relationship with Carmen was civil, not friendly, but we managed for Mia's sake. Becca always said she was fine with my situation, even supportive of my co-parenting arrangement. But as our wedding date approached, things started to change. Becca began acting strangely whenever Mia was around, and small incidents started piling up that made me uneasy. First, Becca began to complain about Mia's behavior. She'd say things like, "Mia's a little too rough with the dog," or "she never picks up her toys." These were minor issues, typical for a 7-year-old, but Becca made them sound like character flaws. Then she started bringing these concerns up in front of Mia, making her feel bad about things that were hardly her fault. I chalked it up to pre-wedding stress and tried to smooth things over. Then came the more troubling incidents. One weekend, Mia came home from Carmen's place upset because her favorite stuffed animal, a bunny she's had since she was a baby, was missing. Mia was certain she left it at my house, but we couldn't find it anywhere. A few days later, I found it stuffed in the back of a closet, torn and dirty. I was shocked. I had no idea how it got there, but Mia was devastated. Becca claimed ignorance and suggested Mia might have done it herself out of carelessness. That didn't sit right with me, but I had no proof, so I let it go. Next, Becca suggested that we redecorate Mia's room. She said it was outdated and that Mia would love something more grown up. I agreed, thinking it would be a nice gesture, but when I saw the new decor, my heart sank. The room was stripped of anything that might comfort a young child. Gone were the bright colors, the stuffed animals, and the princess bedding Mia adored. Instead, the room was bare, almost clinical, with neutral colors and adult furnishings. When Mia saw it, she burst into tears. Becca acted surprised, saying she thought Mia would like the big girl room. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more about making the space less welcoming for Mia than anything else. The final straw came when I overheard a conversation between Becca and one of her friends. They were discussing the wedding, and Becca mentioned how relieved she would be once Mia was out of the picture. She said that with Carmen getting full custody, we could focus on our life together without any distractions. My blood ran cold. I confronted Becca immediately, demanding to know what she meant. That's when the truth came out. Becca admitted that she had been trying to push Mia out of our lives. She wanted our marriage to be just us, without any interference from my past. She confessed to manipulating situations to make Carmen feel like Mia was better off with her full-time. The stuffed bunny, the harsh criticisms, the room makeover. It was all part of her plan to make Mia feel unwelcome and to convince Carmen that I was an unfit father. As Becca spoke, I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. This woman, whom I loved and trusted, had been plotting against me and my daughter. She didn't see Mia as part of our family. She saw her as an obstacle to be removed. I didn't wait for her to finish. I took the engagement ring off her finger and told her to pack her things. I couldn't even look at her. She tried to apologize, to explain that she was only thinking of our future, but her words meant nothing to me. I realized then that the person I thought I knew didn't exist. The woman I was going to marry was a stranger, someone who could hurt an innocent child just to get what she wanted. As Becca left, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had dodged a bullet, a deadly one. The wedding was off, and I knew I had made the right decision. I could never forgive Becca for what she did, but more importantly, I couldn't forgive myself if I had let her into our lives. In the days that followed, I called Carmen and told her everything. She was understandably furious, not at me, but at the situation. We agreed to continue co-parenting as we always had, with Mia's well-being as our top priority. I've been reflecting a lot since then. I loved Becca, or at least I thought I did, but now I see that love isn't just about how someone makes you feel. It's about how they treat the people you care about, especially those who are most vulnerable. In the end, I chose Mia over my own happiness, and I would do it again without hesitation. So, am I the asshole for canceling the wedding and kicking Becca out? Some might say I overreacted, that I should have tried to reassure Becca, to help her feel like life with Mia was less of a competition. But I know in my heart that I made the right choice. Mia is my daughter, and she deserves to be loved and accepted, not pushed aside for someone else's convenience. Becca taught me a hard lesson, but it's one I'll never forget. I'm moving forward, focusing on Mia and rebuilding our lives. The house feels emptier without Becca, but it's a small price to pay for the peace of mind that comes with knowing I protected my daughter from someone who didn't have her best interests at heart. I've learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that define who you are, and I'm okay with that. I never thought I'd be the guy calling off his wedding a week before the big day, but here I am. My name is Adam, and I was supposed to marry Jasmine next Saturday. We've been together for 3 years, and we've lived together for the last year. Everything seemed perfect, at least until last night. Jasmine is beautiful, intelligent, and driven. We met at a charity event, and I was immediately drawn to her. She seemed like the kind of woman who had it all together. We hit it off right away, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. A year into our relationship, she moved in with me and my son Oliver. Oliver is 6 now, but he's been through more than most kids his age. His mother Emily and I were together for 5 years before she passed away in a car accident when Oliver was just a year old. I was devastated, but I had to keep it together for Oliver. I've done my best to raise him on my own, and he's an amazing kid, bright, kind, and full of energy. He's the light of my life. When Jasmine and I started dating, I made it clear from the beginning that Oliver was my priority. Jasmine said she understood, and for a while it seemed like she did. She was great with Oliver, at least on the surface. She'd take him to the park, help him with his homework, and even attend some of his school events. I thought things were going well, and I was relieved to see them getting along. But, as the wedding approached, I started to notice a change in Jasmine. She became more distant when Oliver was around, and I could sense a growing tension between them. She'd make little comments about how exhausting it was to deal with a child and how she couldn't wait until we had our own kids. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just pre-wedding stress. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then, last night, everything came crashing down. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner while Jasmine was on the phone with one of her friends in the living room. I wasn't paying much attention to her conversation until I heard her say something that stopped me in my tracks.
I just can't wait until this wedding is over and we can start our own family. I mean, dealing with his baggage has been tough, but once we have our own kids, things will be different.
Baggage? She was talking about my son, my little boy, as if he were some kind of burden she had to endure. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I walked into the living room and confronted her. "Is that how you really feel about Oliver?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jasmine looked startled, but she quickly recovered.
Adam, you weren't supposed to hear that. I didn't mean it like that.
"Then how did you mean it?" I pressed. She sighed and put down her phone.
Look, Adam, I care about Oliver, but he's not my child. I'll never feel the same way about him as I will about our future children. That's just the truth. I didn't think it would be a big deal.
I stood there stunned. Not a big deal? He lost his mother when he was a baby, Jasmine. He needs someone who loves him like their own, not someone who sees him as baggage. Jasmine crossed her arms, clearly annoyed.
I'm sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear, but I'm just being honest. I love you, Adam, but I can't pretend to have feelings that I don't. I'm excited to have children with you, but I'll never be Oliver's mother. You need to accept that.
In that moment, everything became clear. I realized that I couldn't marry someone who didn't see Oliver as a part of her family. I couldn't bring another child into this world knowing that their stepmother would always see them as separate from her own. I had hoped that Jasmine would grow to love Oliver as her own, but I was wrong. I took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. I can't marry you, Jasmine. I need someone who will love Oliver like he's their own child. I thought that could be you, but I see now that it's not. Jasmine's face twisted in anger.
You're seriously calling off the wedding over this? After everything we've been through?
Yes, I said firmly. Oliver is my son, and he deserves a mother who loves him unconditionally. I can't marry you if you don't feel that way. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. I sat down on the couch feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. I had just ended my relationship with the woman I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, but I knew I had made the right decision. This morning I explained everything to Oliver in the simplest way I could. I told him that Jasmine wouldn't be living with us anymore and that it would just be the two of us for a while. He seemed to take it well, but I could tell he was confused. I reassured him that I loved him more than anything and that nothing would ever change that. So, am I the asshole for calling off the wedding? Some might say I'm overreacting, that Jasmine was just being honest about her feelings, but I know in my heart that I made the right choice. Oliver is my son, and he deserves to be loved and accepted, not seen as a burden. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I will never settle for someone who doesn't love my child as their own. I may have lost Jasmine, but I'm still holding on to the most important thing in my life, my son. And for that, I have no regrets. You may think I was wrong for calling it off the way I did, but I will go to my grave knowing I did the right thing.
When I married Juana, I thought we were starting a new chapter in our lives, blending our families and creating new memories. I have a daughter, Alma, who's now in college. Alma and I have always been close, especially after her mother passed away when she was in high school. One of the most cherished memories she has of her mother is the dollhouse they built and furnished together. It still sat in her childhood room, a testament to those special times they shared. The first time Alma came home from college, she was excited to visit her old room. But when she walked in, she froze. The dollhouse was gone. I'll never forget the look of devastation on her face. She ran out of the room, crying, and asked me where it was. I was shocked. I had no idea what had happened to it. Juana, my wife, admitted that she had given it to her niece. "She loves it so much," Juana said. "You're an adult. Why do you need a dollhouse?" Alma looked at me with such disappointment, and it broke my heart. That dollhouse wasn't just a toy. It was a part of her childhood, a connection to her mother that she could never replace. I knew I had to get it back. I went to Juana's sister's house and asked for the dollhouse. "It was a gift," my sister-in-law reminded me. "It wasn't Juana's to give," I said quietly. It was difficult to explain why it was so important, but I did my best. As I carried the dollhouse out the door, I could hear my sister-in-law yelling at Juana on the phone. When I got home, Alma and I spent hours restoring it. They'd changed some of the wallpaper and recovered some of the furniture, but we fixed it. As we worked, Alma told me stories about her mother and the conversations they'd had while building the house together. The living room was where they discussed a boy she once liked, the bathroom was where they talked about a test she'd failed, and the staircase was where they'd talked after she got in a wreck with her first car. This dollhouse was more than just a house. It was a physical embodiment of Alma's memories with her mother. But after everything, I couldn't look at Juana without feeling resentment. She didn't understand the importance of what she'd taken away from my daughter. Juana was furious that I went behind her back to retrieve the dollhouse. She moved out that night, saying that I was old enough, and so was Alma, to get over it. But I can't. That dollhouse meant the world to Alma, and Juana's disregard for that was something I couldn't forgive. So here I am, wondering if I'm the asshole for letting this be the end of my marriage. Was I wrong for choosing my daughter's memories over my wife's feelings? Should I have just let it go, as Juana suggested, or was I right to stand up for what truly mattered?
When I married Tim, I knew he had a complicated past, but I believed in him. We were a blended family. He had 2 kids from a previous relationship, and I had one of my own. From the beginning, I treated his kids like they were mine. I loved them, cared for them, and did everything I could to make our family whole. But as time went on, Tim's drinking became a problem. It started with a few beers after work, then escalated to hard liquor. I tried to help him. I encouraged him to seek therapy, to attend AA meetings, to do anything that would get him back on track. but he refused to admit he had a problem. His drinking got worse, and so did his behavior. He became verbally abusive, distant, and unpredictable. The kids started to notice. They would cower when he raised his voice, and they stopped inviting friends over because they were embarrassed.
One night, things took a turn for the worse. Tim came home drunk, again. The kids were in their rooms, but they could hear everything. He was yelling, slurring his words, and throwing things around the house. That was the night I realized I couldn't stay any longer.
I had to protect the kids, all of them. The next morning, I packed our things. I took my child and his 2 kids, who had become like my own. They were scared, confused, but they trusted me. I told them we were going somewhere safe. I left Tim a note explaining why I was leaving, but I didn't wait for him to wake up. I just couldn't risk another confrontation. After we left, I filed for divorce and sought full custody of his kids. Tim was furious. He accused me of kidnapping, of brainwashing the kids, and of ruining his life. He's been trying to fight me in court, saying that I had no right to take his children. But they don't want to go back. They've told the social workers that they feel safe with me, that they don't want to live with their father anymore. Now I'm left wondering, am I the asshole for taking his kids when I left? I know he's their biological father, but he wasn't being a father to them. He was a danger to them, and I did what I thought was right to protect them. But part of me feels guilty, like maybe I overstepped, even though I did it out of love and concern. Was I wrong to leave with his kids? Should I have tried harder to make things work? Or was I right to prioritize their safety over everything else? I just want to know if I made the right choice, even if it means I'm the asshole in someone else's eyes.
Thanks for sticking around and listening to these wild stories of evil step-parents and divorce drama. Let me know in the comments whose side you're on. There's always more to the story, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the latest Reddit deep dives. Until next time, keep those notifications on and stay tuned for more crazy tales from the internet.